There we go. Back to you. Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, Resilient Green Spaces is a project funded by the Welsh Government through the Welsh Government by EU Rural Development Programme funding. We've got just over £1 million and the project's running until the end of June 2023. Social Farms and Gardens are leading the project, but we've got a lot of other partners who are doing delivery. So Shared Assets, Land Workers Alliance, Open Food Network, Gwynedd County Council, Cardiff University, and I always forget some, Lantra as well. So it's really exciting kind of partnership with 26 to look at how local green spaces can be kind of the driver for change in terms of health and well-being and biodiversity. So looking at how communities can use their green spaces to be the driver for change in food and biodiversity and engaging local people. So the 6 strands, if I just give you a quick introduction, are looking at establishing more allotments. The second one is around establishing new food hubs, so 5 new local food hubs. Third one is around community orchards and particularly focusing on their kind of productivity and encouraging them to move into more enterprising activity. Fourth is being led by Gwynedd County Council and Social Farms and Gardens. So it's the one strand of work that is local based, and it's looking at the verges and verge management. So Gwynedd County Council doing quite a lot of work about increasing the biodiversity on their verges, and Social Farms and Gardens are leading on the community engagement aspect of that. The 5th strand is being led by Land Workers Alliance and Shared Assets, and they are working together. It's a kind of desk-based research and a little bit of kind of working group research to look at community or local authority owned farms and farm holdings and how we can encourage a community owned kind of transfer to community ownership, and what are the barriers there and how that can be how they can kind of be overcome. And then finally, kind of linked into that one, Lantra and Land Workers Alliance are leading a traineeship for new entrant farmers, so focusing on agroecological methods, but really looking at upskilling people who are interested in joining the farming community, and with kind of those business skills as well as practical farming skills too. So they've ran the traineeship last year. It was a 12-week programme of study visits to various farms around Wales and online training, and then they'll be kicking off the next batch of trainees in April, I think, for 2022. So that's all quite exciting. So that's just to give you a picture of the whole programme, but it's quite an exciting opportunity. In the past kind of 2 years, Social Farms and Gardens has done quite a lot of work for Welsh Government on supporting allotments and orchards. So when this bid initially went in, they were all new to us, and since then we've done quite a lot of work on them, and part of that has been around mapping them, and we've used some of the GeoFutures data in the past and a lot of Welsh Government data, and we've got lots of pinpricks all over a little map that we're not allowed to share because of who owns the data in the first place. So it's all hidden away, unfortunately, and also just the format that the data is in isn't particularly helpful for linking in with some of the other kind of platforms that we'd maybe like to integrate our data with. So one of the things we're quite keen to do across this programme, across Resilient Green Spaces, is to do some work on getting our data and the new data that we're collecting, integrating it with the data we already have and making it accessible for others to use, for us to use, and for us to promote what kind of great community activity is there, where it's happening, and kind of the other indices that could be matched onto that. So just as a slight aside, Natural Resource Wales have done a lot of work over the past, and a lot of budget on doing a lot of work around mapping kind of natural resources in Wales. So we're very keen for our data to be able to be integrated with all the stuff that they've got, which is a kind of huge behemoth of information that you can be waded through. So we are working with Colm at Digital Commons, with one of his hats on, and we've asked them to support us to collect the right data and to map it in the right way. And it'll be it's a bit of a chicken and egg, because we don't necessarily know what we need to know, and he's learning from us what we want to know and how we can map it. So it's quite an exciting process. So we had a kickoff meeting a couple of weeks ago where anyone connected to Resilient Green Spaces, so that was, as well as the actual staff working on the programme, it was other people from Social Farms and Gardens and land workers. So Land Workers Alliance and Open Food Network, for example, all coming together, and just Colm and his colleague Louis did a presentation for us to introduce us to what actually GIS means. So for us, that was about increasing the skill and the knowledge in our sector, so that we can start to have conversations and have thoughts about what data is in our sector as well, and making sure that we're up to speed with what maybe the public sector is doing. And then next Tuesday, we're going to be start to think about, very specifically for Resilient Green Spaces, what kind of data do we want to be collecting, how can we collect it, and particularly this is like the kind of the long-term picture. So what is going to be really useful long-term, how can we maintain this? And we're going to be using the Land Explorer platform to be popping all the data on. It's all going to be, well, it won't necessarily all be polygon data, but the idea would be that it will all be GIS enabled, and be able to be integrated with other platforms, so the NRW data and a lot of the Welsh Government data. So that's kind of where we're at. We're quite an early stage, but I just thought it'd be really useful to, one, get your input. Please bear in mind that I'm new to all of this, so don't ask me any technical questions. But just thinking about this, there's not much data on the Land Explorer map yet in Wales. So this is quite a nice opportunity to start with a blank space and what we want to see there and what we think would be useful for our sector as we kind of champion it. I guess with the kind of public sector in particular, thinking about how do we demonstrate what community activity is, what the impact of community activity is on biodiversity, on health, on economy, and how do we, because I think it's really important that community activity is mapped in with those other things as well, which is maybe what the public sector is more into, so we can demonstrate what our impact is. But also what we are keen for is that through our involvement in this, because it's such a broad partnership, is that we can upskill more people in the sector to understand what is meant by GIS, what is meant by mapping, and what we might want to consider about that as well. So I think that's a really important opportunity that we've got, given the kind of wide reach of the partnership. So I hope I haven't just rambled too much, but hopefully that's a bit of an overview. I have just in the chat as well at the top, I just did pop in our web address for the programme. So if you want to have an actual proper look, and rather than just what I've remembered off the top of my head, if you want to have a look at what the programme's doing, it's there. So yeah, very happy to any questions or suggestions. It is all Wales, just to flag that up as well. We will just be focused on Wales. Rachel.
It sounds really interesting, and I was interested in your question about what data you're collecting, because I think that's something that's really important. I'm going to mention it in the talk I'm going to give later about our local council's data. Have you, what are you going to use to kind of inform you about the kind of data you actually want to collect about these spaces or the communities that use them, or have you got a list already of what you're thinking of? So
initially it'll be the actual kind of sites, I suppose. So we'll be focusing on allotments, food hubs, and LA farms and orchards, community orchards. So those will be the actual kind of places that we can capture. And then out of them, for us, I suppose it's quite useful is just where they are is going to be a key thing. And then linking in with how you access them, so contact details to an extent, or website details or anything like that. So it would be more the we're not trying to map, I guess, the biodiversity or the health indices or anything around that. It would just be these kind of sites, and then using other data from other places to add that further information. Does that make sense? Does that kind of work? Yeah. Janie.
So you're mapping what's already there, not the potential for more space?
Initially, because of the remit of the programme, it'll be what's there. Some of it will be potential space as well. So it could be that people come to us and say, we want to do allotments, but actually in the lighting of the programme, we're not able to kind of support that. But actually there's a place that has got potential for allotments. So it could certainly, that would be within the remit. We are I guess that's our limit, is actually we've only got so much capacity amongst us, and we haven't got anyone specifically allocated to mapping. So it's what's part of other people's kind of delivery roles. So it'll be really useful to know where those sites could be, but it would be focused on allotments and orchards, and I guess potential other community use as well. But that's a good flag, actually. Joolz.
Thanks, Alison. That all sounds really exciting, and is certainly a step forward for Land Explorer in terms of mapping out existing allotments, food hubs, community orchards, local authority farms, and what have you. Do you have any sort of prospective plans to then roll out into other areas? And I ask that specifically for Norfolk and Suffolk, because lots of this data is probably available. We're working on similar things, and we'd be delighted to sort of extend the kind of methodology and focus of the Social Farms and Gardens Resilient Green Spaces project into our area.
Yeah, I mean, we're funded by Welsh Government, so the work that we can do is Wales, but in terms of methodology and stuff, it would be great to do something that works for other places as well. And I think that's what we'd be quite keen to do, because I think we're talking about that next Tuesday, possibly, Colin. You might be able to come in a bit there, but like, what actual methodologies do we use for collecting data, and how can that be replicated across? Because we're obviously all kind of we're not on the ground practitioners, although some of us might be in our other heads, but on this we're all kind of support delivery staff, so infrastructure support staff. So what can we, in our roles, how do we collect data? And then that, I guess those methods would be probably applicable to anyone anywhere. And the Land Explorer map, I know it's currently not covering Northern Ireland, or I think it's not currently covering Northern Ireland, but it does cover Norfolk, and we just want to populate it with more information that can then be used and integrated with other sources of data as well. So yes, so once we've met with Colin and we know what we're doing, yeah, we can suggest some methodologies that we're using.
Yeah, and just adding, so the features that kind of, so that the work is a combination of identifying what data sets that we can pull in from other sources to support this project, identifying what are the priority new things that they want to capture, and making sure that the features on Land Explorer kind of support that type of new data capture. But those features, yeah, kind of will be rolled out to other users of Land Explorer and could be used then in other parts of the country. The lack of kind of base data for Northern Ireland, say, and the sort of very thin on the ground data in Wales, kind of I just say that it's a temporary thing. We just need to sort of prioritize getting the appropriate tiles in for Northern Ireland, and then the other primary layers that kind of you take for granted. So that it's just a matter of time that we just roll these out for other parts of the islands.
Miriam, did you have your hand up earlier?
Maybe you already said that you still have to meet with Colin to figure this out, but about what kind of data or what kind of location data? Is it postcodes, or is it getting sort of like actually tracing it out on a map with the polygon data?
I think I might be able to answer that. Okay. Because a lot of the existing data we have is postcode based, which is actually rubbish for allotments, because that's really having tried to follow it. Postcode's quite a big area, and then trying to work out where the allotment is there, and particularly if the allotments are more rurally based, it's really hard to work out actually where it is, which field it is. So I think we'd be really keen to be using dots to be able to draw the sites, and then I think that gives is it a longitude and latitude or grid reference markers column.
So a postcode kind of, you can sort of generate a long and lat from the postcode and put the approximate sort of flag in the rough area, and that would probably still stay there associated with that project, but then you could add on to it then more detail. So then you can basically do your actually boundary drawing against the map, and then that basically will be polygon data. Each point will be a long and lat in the polygon, but the whole polygon is then available to be exported for other applications, or can be used to sort of measure the area, surface area that's within the boundary, etc.
And that kind of data is much more useful rather than just have it, because what we were having before, we had a postcode which gives a rough area, and then we had to have data sat behind it saying how many hectares it was or how many plots it was, and it couldn't all be matched up to each other. So for example, you could have data that says you've got 50 plots, but actually you don't know how big those plots are on your allotment, or you could have that's 2 hectares or something, but actually some of that isn't suitable for growing. So actually having the polygons is a lot easier, one, for people to view it, for people to kind of get a picture of what's there, but also in terms of mapping how much green space there is, how much growing space there is. That's a lot more of an useful data set, I suppose, than just a list of postcodes where there are allotments.
Yeah, so we're gathering information at the minute, so it's just to know what would be useful. Not
I would certainly recommend trying to do grid references if you can. But consistency.
But I think the important key is identifying how you would like to categorize the different land uses, because on the map then you can sort of categorize the different polygons as a different land use, and if the more aligned those categories are with other projects, the more likely that we can sort of the data can be used by other projects. So that'll be a good thing to try and cover when we get together next week.
Yeah.
Could you just remind me what the geographical area of the project is that you'll be covering?
So it is Pan Wales. It's across all of Wales, but
Wow.
It is just Wales.
Okay.
I imagine we won't capture everything that's there, but that'll be that's the work. That's the cover.
And how long is the project? How long have you got?
Just until the end of June 23.
Okay.
It took them a while to sign off the project, but we've been kind of active kind of since March last year, properly in full swing since September. So it's about 18 months in total. And
that's for all the different strands?
Yeah. But some of them are building on existing work. So we do already have a lot of allotment and orchard data in particular. And the food hubs work, because Open Food Network are leading on that. That's going to be fairly easy to map because there isn't a huge amounts. But that would be quite interesting to link with community fridges and find out from them and be able to map them, and other kind of food surplus or the food hubs that we're promoting are actually food surplus. They're kind of promoting short supply chains and local food, but those kind of hubs for food information would be really useful, I think.
And so working with different local authorities, how important is that relationship, having their support or buy-in or availability, accessing the data that local authorities already have, or do you know that it's really patchy, or
it is patchy, it depends on which local authority you speak to, but Shared Assets and Land Workers Alliance on their work strand are really leading on the kind of engagement with local authorities and getting kind of different responses back, really. So I'm probably not the best person to speak on that, but I can certainly update kind of 6 months time once I know once they've had a chance to kind of assess what information they've got and we know how we're plotting that. Just as a side note, I have spoken to Monmouthshire County Council this week because they're trying to do some last minute spend of some money for mapping. So there's some quite interesting stuff going on there, but they haven't got any capacity to do it. But I don't know if anyone else has come up with that. Jeremy? just come off.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much, and you know, good luck with your babies and good luck with the you've got to leave in a minute. I think it's all very interesting. Maddie and I had a chat with some people from Monmouthshire or Brecon Black Mountain yesterday, called Our Food. Yeah. And they're you know, it's just all very interesting. So maybe there's some synergy. If Monmouthshire want to give us some money, I'm sure we can find someone to do mapping. Okie dokie, I'll ping them an email. Thanks everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to drop me an email via Maddie, or I'm just Alison at Farm Garden, and I'm happy to talk a little bit further about it. But yeah, like I say, hopefully it will be a tool that can be really used. We're hoping to provide a resource that can be used by kind of community people. So whatever we think might be useful and we've got capacity to do, we'd love to support and make sure it links in. That's going to be really important. Yeah, it's really exciting collaboration, all the different organisations that are involved, and the fact that it's all of Wales as well is huge. Yeah. I mean, huge as in not just geographically, but as in like it's a really significant thing to do for the whole nation. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, we've all got to leave now. See you all soon. Bye. Thanks a lot. Bye.
I can add a little bit. So I had a meeting with Kim from Shared Assets just over a week ago to discuss how to one of the part of the discussion was interacting with councils and their data. And yeah, it is very, very varied. Kind of some councils it'll be kind of really, really crude data in a maybe not even on a spreadsheet, and the work to get that available and on the platform could be quite a bit of work. So yeah, it's going to be bespoke. Kind of each interaction with a council will require looking specifically at how accessible the data is. And one thing I didn't mention before, up until recently, we've been focusing on data that was sort of public, but we will be adding kind of the ability to sort of just decide how public you want the data. So basically, if a council was provided data, but it was only for a partnership or within a certain user group, we were able to restrict the access to that data to the defined group. So it doesn't have to be all open source kind of data. So that will maybe help open the doors where if a data supplier was a bit hesitant or had some licensing limits on how they could use the data. So we can accommodate that, or we will be able to accommodate that sort of in future near future iterations of Land Explorer. Great, thanks, Colin. Yeah, it'd be really great to keep track of how that project unfolds over the next year or so. Wonderful. So anyone who's part of Social Farms and Gardens has just had to leave because they've got a staff meeting. So we've just lost Miriam and Connor as well. So we're just going to have a quick go round because there's some new faces here. If everyone could we've got about 10 minutes, so maybe those who aren't new can just be quite brief, and then that will give a little bit more time for the new faces to say a little bit more about what they're doing and why they've come to this group. So Janie, do you want to start? And then just hello, Dan.
Hello, Dante. It's good. Yeah, I'll start. My name's Janie, and I have been involved with Incredible Edible, especially in Lambeth, but now nationally. We did an interesting piece of work in Lambeth, mapping land for food growing projects, which is really how I think I met Maddie and started talking to Maddie. Can't quite remember how we met. Anyway, really interested in all the ways in which people are mapping and looking to see how we can share our knowledge better and why we might do that. I'm now based in Oxford and I'm working at Oxford City Farm, which is very exciting, but continuing, especially with this piece on right to grow. I can share the latest draft with you today in the chat. Incredible Edible nationally is developing a right to grow piece, which they're hoping to put before parliamentarians in April. And it's essentially about local authority land and accessing local authority land for food growing. So I'll share that with you and I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Do you want to pass it, Janie?
Oh yeah, Emily.
It's Emily, yeah, thank you.
Emily.
Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, I'm based in Leeds. I'm part of a project that's called Climate Action Leeds, and but we don't have capacity to do land mapping in this project. So I'm through another sort of collective of ecological economists, together with Jamie, we were thinking of doing a project around like mapping land for food growing and also biodiversity enhancement, etc. But so just finding this group and getting to know how to move forward is very like early stages. But we have some good connections through Climate Action Leeds with the council, and we kind of want to focus on like public land, and yeah, because it's not available on Leeds City Council. That data is not clearly is out there yet. So it's just a question of also getting it out and then involving the community, etc. So yeah, look forward to hearing more from you and learning. And I'll pass on to Rachel.
Hi everyone, I won't talk too long because I'm about to talk next, but I'm at Lancaster University and I've done a project around land mapping in the urban and rural spaces as well, called Urban Hotspots, and I'll introduce that in a bit. So yeah, I will pass to Jeremy.
Hi, I'm working with Maddie. I'm sort of basically the instigator of the Urban Agriculture Consortium, although based on a long track record in the environmental sector before that. I'm just listening in really, but we're trying to work out in our brains a narrative of how the agroecology, urban agroecology fits into the systemic change we all need. And just had an e-newsletter from Food and Farming Countryside Commission with a quote from Sue Pritchard talking about dysfunctionality of the commodified food system. And I'm just getting more and more annoyed about everything in the capitalist system, and not to mention politics too much, but the whole debacle going on at the moment with Johnson blaming everybody else for everything and not taking any responsibility is just a sort of symptom of the corruption and decadence of the whole fucking system. So, sorry about that. I'll pass on to Yang Zhang.
Hi, I'm Yang. I'm from University of Liverpool. So we have Virtual Engineering Center, which is part of University of Liverpool. I've worked on a project to develop an interactive dashboard to mapping the healthy food accessibility in the University of in the Liverpool City region. I'm here just because I'm kind of quite new in this area, so I'm just here to learn, to see how what other people are doing, and also happy to see if there are potential way to extend our knowledge in this area, and also. Just a second, sorry. I will paste the link of the dashboard we developed in the chat box and to see if anyone interested in that. That's everything from me, and I will pass it to Mark.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Thurstain. I'm a geospatial scientist and have been working in the food space since 2009, when I worked with Incredible Edibles Somerset and also the Transition Network. Since that time, I've been doing bits and bobs, but it's really kind of accelerated over the last year. I've been working with Rachel and her colleagues at Lancaster University on the Urban Project, which I'll be showing the presentation with shortly. And I'm also researching for a PhD at Bristol University's School of Geographical Sciences, where I'm taking an ecological economics angle on modelling the potential for new food systems in city regions and urban hinterlands. And I'm also running an iPad, so it's a bit different to normal. So I'll pass over to Colin.
Yes, I've already spoken, so I won't say too much, but yes, I'm Colin Massey, one of the directors at technical director at Digital Commons, and also part of Solidarity Economy Association. Yeah, and I'm so leading the this project with Resilient Green Spaces. So I wasn't paying attention to who hasn't. Jamie, have you spoken?
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie. I've been working with Emily over the last year or so to sort of get to grips with everything that's going on in this space. Been working in the food sector for 3 to 4 years now, initially as a grower, and now I'm at Organic North, which is like a veg wholesaler in the north of England. Yeah, there's not a huge amount to report on what we're doing as a project yet. We're still at the stage where we're sort of attending these meetings and meeting up with other people who have already got sort of well-established projects. So yeah, just really keen to learn what everyone's doing and sort of just sit in the background and listen for now, I think is the plan. Pass on to Simon.
Can't hear you, Simon. It says you're unmuted, but can't hear you. Had the same thing with you the other day, Jeremy. Don't know what it was. Gonna try unplugging your headphones.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Ah, there we go. Cool. Sorry about that. My name's Simon Ruston. I'm a planning consultant who's working with the UAC at the present. I also echo everything Jeremy said previously about the current state of things. And I am here just to listen for the minute and see what I can pick up.
Dan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Maddie, and hello everyone. Sorry I was late, I had a meeting I overran. So my name is Dan Evans. I'm a soil scientist and I hold a research fellowship at Cranfield University over in Bedfordshire. Currently, I'm one of the members of the Urban Revolution project, which is in part based in Cranfield, but also in Liverpool and Lancaster with Rachel. And also I hold an STFC Science and Technologies Facilities Council, so it's one of the UKRI research councils. They have a food network, and I have a project funded by that network based in Newcastle, which is looking at vacant and underutilised areas of that city, the environmental, social and spatial aspects of these spaces and their suitability for urban agriculture. So that's me in a nutshell. I'll hand back to Maddie because I don't actually know, coming in late, who's not spoken, who has spoken.
I think it's just Joolz. Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Oh, what a fantastic group of people and skills. I'm Joolz. I'm managing director of iFarm in Norfolk, and we've got 10 acres of land. And we're a community practice that are focusing on community supported agriculture to combat social isolation and loneliness as our primary purpose. And what we're also doing is sort of bringing assets of community value back in and recreating the commons. So we started with a piece of land, and then we're also buying the local pub. And that, in terms of being a community practice, we're focusing on community climate action. And that includes everything from housing, energy, agriculture and transport. And our focus here, I guess, is land, food and farming, because that's a key part of well-being. And we have developed some excellent relationships with our local authorities from parish, district to county council level, and very supportive councils who have very interesting mental health programs in terms of YANA, You Are Not Alone, particularly in rural communities where farmers are #1 suicide risk, for instance, because it's not easy being a farmer trapped between big ag and the supermarkets. And our local authority is also developing mindful towns and villages focusing on a well-being economy, which is very exciting. In particular, we're looking at installing a smart energy microgrid for the village, retrofitting houses, this kind of thing, and rural regeneration. So what does that kind of just transition look like? And to do that, we're engaging with the programme manager for Suffolk County Council for the delivery of their net zero aspirations, because we can't do it without our communities, and also our higher education establishments like West Suffolk College and their sustainability department, really looking at what courses they might provide, what apprenticeships and what jobs there might be moving forward. So a broad spectrum of a sort of fairly holistic approach, but as I say, really focused on a well-being economy. Previous role, I've been product development director for large-scale SaaS software applications, and I worked for Shared Assets as digital coordinator, developing the minimum viable product for Land Explorer, and previously worked with Column. So I have lots of information, or lots of knowledge of Land Explorer as a platform, and I'm probably going to be talking a little bit about other software as well today, but that's a bit about me. Thanks.
Wow, brilliant. Thanks everybody. Yeah, we'll come back to this a bit later on about how we kind of synergize and what it means to be in this group with this, this, as Joolz said, amazing skills and knowledge between you all. Yeah, just I'm Maddie. I coordinate the Urban Agriculture Consortium with Jeremy, and we basically sort of convene collaborations, bring people together and do lots of weaving to try to amplify what is going on already, and accelerate change by doing that. So that's us in a nutshell as well. I'm going to pass over to Rachel, who is going to tell us about the Urban Hope Spots mapping project that they have been doing, that she's been doing.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie. I'm really sorry, but I thought we had a bit longer, so I'm going to try and cut down what we're going to say, but we might go over a tiny bit.
That's fine.
So apologies for that. So yeah, me and Mark are going to talk about this project we've been working on for the past kind of half a year or more now, called Urban Hope Spots. The project builds on some work that Mark and Mary from Friends of the Earth, who was here a bit earlier, did, looking at lapping opportunity for woodland creation in the peri-urban area and kind of mapping ecological and kind of social data to identify spaces. And then also building in research from the Urban project, which Dan mentioned, which was just published, a paper that actually ended up in The Guardian and other places, looking at the potential for land or potential food growing opportunities of land in urban spaces, and mapping like a UK-wide scale actually how much fruit and vegetables could be growing in our urban spaces, looking at the land that's available. And we wanted to look at actually what does that look like in a local area, like what does that land actually look like, and if you do more detailed mapping, what more do you find out? And at the same time, I was working really closely with our local food partnership in North Lancashire, Food Futures. We've just done a huge piece of strategy work, working with the community, doing visioning, and one of the things that came out is kind of this, we wanted to see more food growing spaces in our urban areas, more small scale farms around the urban fringe, and more areas of biodiversity throughout the district. And we thought one aspect of this we were going to take forward was a land audit to understand the land in our area. So this was an opportunity really to combine the different mapping approaches that Mark has, and also combine like a practical approach of how do you do this as a community, how do you understand land differently in your area. So we have a few different outputs, and Mark's going to talk first about our open source approach, and then I'm going to talk a bit more detail about our additional data sets you can use to understand land in your urban space for food growing better, and also some things I've learned along the way, because I think what was mentioned earlier about learning GIS is really valuable, because I have never used GIS before, and Mark's kind of helped me through it, and was going to create a video at the end of the project that kind of summarizes, how do you do this open source approach on GIS as a total beginner. And I think once you start exploring data in that way, that you realize how much you can kind of find out, but also tells you, I guess people here will know how much you need to think about what data you're collecting and how you collect it and how you categorize it, if you want it to be useful for different things. So Mark, do you want to go first to present the open source approach? I can see you on your iPad, so you've gone dark, but are you going to share screen, or do you want me to? Okay, great.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah,
oh,
sorry.
Okay.
I thought I'd. Did you see that slide though? Is the key thing.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Maddie?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Right. Hooray. Sorry. You wouldn't think I'm a bit of a techno geek, but I'm still. iPads sometimes just confuse me. So I'll zip through this as quickly as I can, because I know we haven't got much time. So as Rachel said, building on work that I did with Friends of the Earth, looking for locations for tree planting in Bristol and Bath, we've taken a similar approach to identify areas suitable for food production in and around Lancaster, with a key proviso that as much as possible, well, that this approach would be completely open sourced, and I'll come back to that right at the end. So for those of you like me who perhaps don't know Lancaster terribly well, it sits just south of the Lake District, and so is quite hilly, with quite a lot of major woodland, particularly in the north of the district. And in terms of its urban landscape, it's dominated by, I don't know if they would describe themselves as twin towns, but towns on either side of the River Lune, which is Lancaster in the south and Morecambe in the northwest on the coast there, as well as a number of smaller settlements dotted around from large villages through to small hamlets. And in terms of its communications, the main urban areas sit just to the west of the M6, and there are main routeways radiating from Lancaster, largely along the valley bottoms, particularly as you can see there along the valley of the River Lune. So when we start looking at the potential for food production and thinking very much in terms of the availability of open source data, a good place to start is the agricultural land classification. This data is available in England, and versions are also available in Wales and Scotland. Unfortunately, that's not the case in Northern Ireland. And as unfortunately in many respects in this area, the way that spatial data are handled and disseminated in Northern Ireland is different to the rest of the UK. But sticking now for what we can do in mainland UK, we've got the agricultural land classification, and we're particularly interested in grades 1 through 4. So 1 being the best quality agricultural land, degrading all the way through to 4. There is no grade 1 agricultural land in the district, and in fact there's only a little bit of grade 2 land in 2 pockets that you can see to the southwest of that map. Grade 5 land is predominantly found in upland areas and could be associated, I guess, with sheep grazing, and was not included in this particular model. But if you were that way inclined, there's no reason why you couldn't look at grade 5 agricultural land as well. When we zoom in and look at the 2 main settlements in a little more detail, something becomes quite apparent, and that's really the relative coarseness of the agricultural land classification data set. In the GIS world, we say that data set is quite generalized, and we can see how it seems to be overlapping and impinging into some of the urban areas. And there's also got to be questions about, at a local level, how precise the classification is and how real those boundaries are, in this case between grade 3 and grade 4 land is concerned. But of course, what we have to bear in mind is the agricultural land classification was developed for kind of national level statistics. And often when we start piggybacking on data sets that are open source, that are often generated for a national level, we find that they don't necessarily translate as well to the local level. But that's not to say that they're not useful, particularly when they can be augmented with more localized data sets. And in this example, I'm showing the Ordnance Survey open green space data that's freely available. And that includes many types of greenland parcels that maybe not necessarily useful for land production, but certainly are important within urban areas, such as everything from sports pitches through to cemeteries. There is also, importantly, a classification for allotments within the Ordnance Survey green space data, but I think we would question about how up to date that data set actually is. But crucially, in this instance, what it gives us is an insight of potential for food production within the urban areas. We also work quite closely with Lancaster City Council in this project and got access to their green space data that was created by a consultant about 5 or 6 years ago. Certainly, on the face of it, it is much richer than the Ordnance Survey data, certainly in terms of its coverage and in terms of the sorts of land parcels that are included. But since the production of this data set wasn't really geared towards any kind of notion of food production, its classification is a bit ropey, and Rachel might touch on that a bit later on, in terms of even how local authority data sets can be quite difficult to use and manipulate in this context. Also, because it was generated based on Ordnance Survey data and under license, this data is not freely available. And so in this example, we haven't included it in the open source model. But as Colin mentioned earlier, there are opportunities to use these data in certain circumstances with permission from local authorities. So the Rurban project concerns the peri-urban, so that kind of interesting boundary zone between urban and rural areas. And in order to take the project forward, we had to come up with a definition of this. And it's quite interesting looking at Lancaster district, because we've got quite a range of types of settlement. It's a surprisingly complex urban picture, obviously dominated by the two main settlements, but we also have a lot of smaller settlements within the rural areas. And if we were to define peri-urban around all of those settlements, we perhaps wouldn't get a real insight to the way that food production could support the bulk of the local population. So what we did was identify the key urban settlements. And again, this is in itself quite a tricky task. But fortunately, we were able to find an open source data set from the ONS to identify those key settlements. There is a better way of doing it, but we decided not to kind of go along that route of generating urban area boundaries, because this was really beyond the skill set of many potential users of this approach. And really, we're trying to gear this towards people who haven't had much experience with GIS and mapping technologies. So having got the ONS data, we're able to define the peri-urban as being an area of 1,600 meters from the boundary of the settlement. This was based on the notion that you can walk that far in about 20 minutes. Now, there's no hard and fast rule why it should be 1,600. We kind of picked that out as a useful indicator. For some areas, that may be extended beyond 1,600. For others, it may be shrunk. It really is a matter for the particular location being studied. So if we combine then our agricultural land classification grades 2, 3 and 4 with the OS green space, and then restrict them to those areas within 1,600 meters of major settlements, our so-called peri-urban areas, then this is the map we come up with. So these, in a sense, are the candidate locations for food production within Lancaster's peri-urban area. However, this is a, you know, arguably a map-based, well, it is a map-based exercise, and really what we haven't considered are any constraints to food production. And so what I'd like to do now is just run through some of the constraints we considered. This is not an exhaustive list, but starts to show how we can start to filter out some locations which are not particularly suitable. So the first constraint was were nature reserves and SSSIs, because clearly they can't grow food on those, and those are the areas shown in red. So we want to remove them. We also looked at woodland. In that first map, again, I had a very coarse map of woodland, but actually getting more detailed data from OS OpenMap, we're able to identify patches of woodland within our peri area that really aren't suitable for food production, notwithstanding the idea of agroforestry and agro-food production on the periphery. But in this case, we thought we would simplify it and take out all major stands of woodland. And also of crucial importance here was flooding. The River Loon is prone to flooding, as is some of its tributaries. So we got hold of some open source flood data from the Environment Agency and removed those areas as well from our candidate locations for food production. We did have some issues with the data, particularly with the Environment Agency in terms of its manipulation within the GIS. I won't bore you with that, but what we did encounter was some difficulty that may again stymie more inexperienced users of GIS. So these areas in grey are those areas where we've kind of combined all those constraints, and these are the ones to be subtracted from our candidate locations. And this is how we kind of pull it all together to identify what we call food hope spots, those locations which have strong potential for food production. And these are those that we've defined. So you can see how we've brought together the constraints and the candidate locations. And then when we look at that in more detail, we can see how this fits in with the urban geography of the district. One of the key things in Lancaster, as you might imagine, is topography. So one thing we wanted to look at was all those areas where the gradient of slope was greater than 7 degrees. That's quite an interesting cutoff point, because there is a differentiation in the agricultural land classification between grades 3A and 3B, and that's largely defined by slope. So areas with a gradient of 7 degrees or more are considered steep sloped, and therefore perhaps not so suitable for food production. Now, of course, that's not necessarily the case, because of course we can do terracing and so forth. But again, this may give a further insight to the potential for food production. And then when we zoom even into the urban areas, we do see that there are some areas that are quite hilly and where we have steep slopes. So when we're starting to focus on locations for food production, we certainly want to look at those areas in yellow, and perhaps be more concerned in those, or concentrate more on those areas where the slopes aren't quite so steep. So finally, I mentioned that this is an open source project. We have prepared some information to guide the new user through how to use the GIS, and we're putting that on GitHub. I'm also starting a small project to codify this into a computer model, so it could be run fairly simply. While this has got a URL on it, I'm in the process of transferring this to another Git repo, which will be open source, will be freely available. I've had some problems with the data, so that's why I need to do a little more tweaking. I'm hoping by the end of the week to have that complete, and I'll certainly pass on the GitHub repo address via Maddie in the very near future. I think that's me.
Thank you, Mark. And I'll just give a quick 5 minutes on some, on going beyond the open source, I guess, and thinking about how do we use this as a community. And one thing that Mark's visualizations are really valuable for, especially in the area that we live, which is very much dominated by livestock farming, because that's, if you look at the agricultural land classification, that's probably all you can grow around here. And we've had some interesting discussions about that with the local NFU, who kind of very strongly don't believe that you can do anything else apart from livestock farming around here. So having visualizations like Mark's really gets, and I guess the numbers that can come out of that in terms of potential land area is really valuable for sparking debate, having some interesting conversations. But in terms of looking at actually our land more closely, locally, then there's some other things that I've been looking at and kind of exploring. I just wanted to quickly run through them, because these are things that could be useful for other places. So trying to move beyond just open source data, and how can we use other data sets to get a bit more insight into our land. And because I'm at a university, we do have access to Digimap, and some councils have access to some parts of this, and schools do as well. So although what I did as part of a research project, you could also do this as part of a schools project, or maybe the council could think about purchasing some of the data if they think it's useful. So one thing we looked at historic land data. So looking back, Mark had a student over the summer who looked back through historic maps going back to 1830, and they mapped on where there was signs of allotments, where there was signs of market gardens, so in terms of glass houses, and when these appeared and when these disappeared. And what we found is, as you'd expect, there's a lot more in terms of allotments in market garden areas in the district than there is currently. And these are all kind of marked here on the green. And it's something we thought about sharing with the council, because although some have been built over, there's some that actually haven't been built over and still could be areas for potential development, could have potentially quite rich soil still from their previous land use. And although we can't actually pass on this data to our council at the moment, we can actually pass on maps and visualizations, and we can talk to the council about getting their own license to access this. And then another thing we've looked at is the UK CEH land cover data. So this is also available through Digimap. And this is useful for us because of the fact we have really broad, most of the land around here, as Mark said, is grade 3 or grade 4 in the agricultural land classification. But if you look more closely at the land using the CEH land map, you can see there's lots of different types of land cover over time. And this data is actually collected every year, I guess, I'm not actually sure the process, but I guess via satellite imagery. And it maps on like the land cover at the time, or predominant land cover over the time. And I just wanted to show, this is the area near Lancaster. The green is all improved grassland, which is what we have a lot around here, like well fertilized perennial ryegrass. But the brown areas are areas that are either bare soil, so they've been ploughed, or there is also a little bit of cropping. And these are useful.
Rachel, I can't see anything on the screen. Is there supposed to be screen share?
Oh yes. Sorry, I was just like so. Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Well, sorry, you should have shouted at me sooner.
No, I'm completely following you, and then you started talking about colours, and then I realised.
I'll just show you that this is the historic allotment data, just so you can see. So all the like bright green patches are the old historic allotments in the district, and also market gardens, so where there was glass houses. So you can see there's quite a lot there. And yes, sorry, this is the data set I was trying to show you. So yeah, the bright green is this improved grassland. The brown are these either arable or ploughed. And for us, this is really useful because farmers around here will tend to plough fields that are less likely to flood, that probably are going to be used in some way for some type of cropping. So for us, this really helps us identify where we might want to concentrate trying to access land from farmers, which is what we're trying to do as a food partnership. We're trying to contact local farmers and say, would you be interested in maybe hiring or renting out some fields, and would be interested in these ones. It's also interesting because they're probably the fields they're less likely to want to rent out, because they're probably some of their more productive ones. But it helps break down that big, broad agricultural land classification into something that actually in some areas might make it slightly easier to target potential land parcels. It also identifies kind of priority habitats. So there's some grassland that we definitely shouldn't be planting food on. for instance, kind of protected kind of hay meadows and things like that up here that are priority habitats. So it's useful for kind of digging down into the land a bit more closely. And then this is a local council data set, which was really interesting for us. And one of the benefits of our project is that it's enabled us to have really close ties to the council, and they've given us access to a lot of their data they've collected. So this is a local council data that was collected by a consultant. I'm not sure how they did it, if they actually went out or whether they used Google Maps. And what you'll see here is that the data that's in, or the kind of polygons that are in light purple, that's data that was collected by the council only. So it's stuff that hasn't been picked up by other methods. The OS open space is in the bright red, so that's the open source data. So there's some few bright red areas, and that's data that hasn't been picked up by the consultant. And then the overlap, so the overlap between the Ordnance Survey data, the open space data, and on the ground kind of collected data is in a deep purple. So you can see there's quite a lot of this lilac, which is stuff that isn't picked up by the open space data. And what we found is a lot of these parcels are actually amenity green space or have been classified as amenity green space. And I think these are really interesting patches of land that are not getting picked up by the open space data, but actually have some potential for increasing food production, increasing biodiversity corridors in our urban areas. So I've been ground truthing this through Google Maps and Street View, and I've created a new data set for the council I call it food growing hotspots kind of category. But I haven't actually said yet, haven't made that into a binary thing like yes and no. I've kind of included information that adds detail to the data that was collected. So when the data was collected, it's all just amenity green space. But when I've been ground truthing, I found that some of it's been woodland, some of it's been scrub, some of it's been space between houses, others has been tennis pitches. So it really made me think about how important it is to, when you collect the data, I guess if you're going to do this as a community or as a local council, thinking about the various different purposes you can use the data for, and then how you're going to categorize things so it is useful for those purposes. So yeah, I'm hoping that by adding this column in, it gives us a bit more of an understanding of this amenity green space in our district. Yeah, and then we've also trialed a subscription service that was recommended to us by another food by Gareth Roberts over in Sheffield from Regather, which helps you look at the land registry data. And we've actually been user testing this a bit against Land Explorer's work. They're trying to develop, or they're working on developing an open source kind of alternative, putting on open source data. And so far we've found lots of good sort of similarities in usability. Yeah, so in terms of the outputs, we're going to have these open source methodologies. So there's the one that Mark mentioned on GitHub, which other people can add ideas and kind of new ways of potentially manipulating the data or using different data sets with that approach. I'm busy writing up a land mappers guide, which is kind of giving some of that kind of overall stuff that Mark's done, but also developing some of these ideas I talked about, like how we could use non-open source data and the barriers and opportunities of that. And then Mark's also creating a video to help the new beginner or the new person to GIS use QGIS, which is an open source GIS software, so they can actually start exploring data sets that exist. Yeah, and I just wanted to finish with this because this is a community farm that I'm part of on the outside, or community food project that I'm part of on the outside of Lancaster. It's on a grade 4 agricultural land field, and it's absolutely beautiful, and we have loads of food, and we also have biodiversity and flood mitigation. So I just think it's really positive to start talking about how we use land differently and actually question some of the ways that data is. I think the agricultural land classification data set is actually quite a dangerous data set because it's designed for a certain purpose, and we need to redesign that purpose. Yeah, I think that's me. I'll stop sharing. Thank you for listening.
Amazing. That's so brilliant to see how it's all come together over the last few months, and just the very clear kind of methodology of, you know, and how it goes, you know, layering up, focusing in to become something very tangible and useful, meaningful. So we've got just a bit of time for any questions or reactions, or yeah, Simon.
Right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, now I've got to turn this up. I can't hear you though.
Oh,
I can now, sorry. I had 3 points to raise, but before that, I think this is brilliant. I think this is really exciting, and from a planning perspective, I think there's loads of potential. And Rachel, I'm sure we'll discuss this fairly soon. But my 3 points were, the first one was, I think that there's a really good point on historic narrative. Now, for a lot of people, and Brexit is a wonderful example, they kind of pine for the past and the security of the idea of the past. And if there's a point being made about the historic provision of allotments, then I think that's quite a good thing from the point of view of creating a narrative. The two other things were a few questions and then a possible idea, which was the first: does the mapping include any idea of land availability? The second question is, the council map that you were working off, Rachel, is that land, sorry if I missed this, is that land that's already designated as local green space? And the comments I've got is that the hope spots that you've identified, it will be very interesting to see if the council will be willing to allocate them as open green space, but specifically for food growing. And I know that's something that's being discussed elsewhere in the country that's relatively exciting in my view. So yeah, 2 questions and a comment.
Okay, yeah, so the questions, I think the land availability, we haven't managed to map that because it's huge, like when looking through the land registry, and each land parcel seems to be owned by someone different, so we haven't done that. But the council's data, I'm actually not sure how much of it is land they own and how much it is like land that's open to other people but owned by other people, so I should ask them that. But they are really keen to integrate the hope spots that we've identified into their own kind of mapping. So they've done like a green and blue infrastructure mapping of the district. They want to have like a food layer within that. I think the trouble with like our initial mapping is that it's huge. Like there's actually quite, because we're challenging what has been the narrative around here in terms of agriculture, we have a lot of hope spots. So it's whether or not they want to actually, how they want to use that for their own data set, or whether they want to use some of the more detailed data. So with the CEH data, the land cover, because they have a huge development about to happen on the outskirts of Lancaster, they've bought up a lot of land, or they're going to buy up a lot of land, and they want to know where they can put food within that land, and is there certain maps or data they can use to identify where would be best placed for like community food projects. So they're very open to community food projects, as you know. I think we've spoken about it, but it's what data they need to help them make that decision.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm sure we'll discuss it again quite soon. Yeah, that'd be great. And I just saw Jane's project question as well about contaminated areas. Is that we didn't find like a really easy to use data set on that, like not like a national data set or even like a local data set. You seem to need to, when I contacted the Environment Agency and contacted the local council, you had to kind of contact on a site-by-site basis. So I decided it was better actually for us to identify sites we're interested in and then make the inquiries about those sites rather than trying to integrate it into as a layer. But I did find a data set which was a national land use survey, previous land use survey, which was from I think 2008. It was under the Labour government, and they sent out this survey to all the local authorities, and I only got like 25% response rate. So it's also the idea, like you have a nice idea of how it might be useful to collect data, but then people don't respond, or you need to think about how you're going to resource the collecting of that data.
And on the contaminated land aspect, in the late 1990s, the Department of the Environment, Local Government and the Regions, as it then was, did actually develop something called the Contaminated Land Register, which did cover, I believe, the whole of England and Wales, funny enough. But that's disappeared, and I tried to, get in touch with people I know who might have known about it. And as far as they're saying, that data set's gone. And I think this is very interesting in terms of what we're trying to do, not only in terms of a historic perspective, but just to bear in mind that some data sets have a lifespan, and they can disappear surprisingly easily, and it's something for us to be aware of moving forward, that even, you know, solid, what we might consider solid data sets, dare I say the agricultural land classification, in due course could disappear, and so it is important for us to be aware of that.
Joolz, I'm just thinking, in the interest of time, we'll have Joolz and then Jamie, if you could keep it fairly succinct. It's my fault for not giving this item nearly enough time on the agenda, so I'm sorry about that, but we'll shuffle everything up and deal with some of the bigger picture thinking stuff probably outside this meeting. But yes, so we'll Jamie and then Joolz, and if anyone else has got any questions, please just put them in the, or thoughts, please put them in the chat for Rachel and Mark to pick up and for others to see. And then after you guys, we'll have a couple of minutes break and then we'll come back. Joolz.
So just very briefly on contaminated land, it's a thing that I've looked at previously for Land Explorer. Local authorities are mandated by government to publish their brownfield data annually now, so they generally do. And sitting alongside that with every local authority is a list of contaminated brownfield sites that they don't publish, but they do have that data. So I've looked at that in particular for phytoremediation, using plants to decontaminate that land. So local authorities generally do have it, but don't publish it. So that might help.
Nice. Jamie.
Yeah, thanks for that. It was really inspiring stuff. I guess my question is sort of more broadly around GIS. I don't have much experience at all with it. And all of this, the talk of the different softwares and applications you can use, I guess, is finding a bit confusing. I don't know if someone can give like a very brief overview of like what's the difference between QGIS and Land Explorer. Why would you use one or the other? Is one probably more of like the, I don't know, the technical analysis of the landscape, and one's for mapping, or is there an overlap, or it'd just be useful to know?
So GIS is a term that, so it stands for Geographic Information System, and it kind of covers the whole bevy of different software platforms and indeed internet platforms. So to some degree, Google Maps is a GIS because it's actually showing data on a map base, and the degree of the kind of visualization of data and the sort of data that's visualized and how you can manipulate varies with the complexity. So Google Maps, very simple. Move on to something like Land Explorer, is becoming much more sophisticated. When you start looking at what we kind of call a desktop GIS, you're able to manipulate the data much more effectively, so and much more powerfully. So the work we did with the hope spots required a degree of data manipulation and geospatial manipulation to derive the maps at the end. So GIS kind of covers a whole gamut of everything from very simple online visualization through to much more sophisticated software platforms that enable you to create and manipulate and process data, geographical data, in a certain way. And I think finally that a key point is that I see that Janie says it's very technical. Yes, and that's part of the problem, that the software we're talking about is technical. Often people do master's degrees to learn how to really utilize it. But nonetheless, there are open source GIS platforms, and QGIS is one of those open source platforms, which is very powerful and doesn't cost the earth, because if you look at some of the commercially available platforms, you could be paying thousands of pounds for a license. So one of the things that we've been looking at is looking at the open source aspect, recognizing that it's very technical, and Rachel can talk to this because she actually cut her teeth on GIS for the first time with QGIS. And what we're trying to do is to demystify that as far as possible. But what we must stress is, nonetheless, at some point, you'll come across things that are technical and difficult to solve.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe I know I've probably done everything wrong. I probably would make you, like, you'd howl if you saw the sort of things I was doing, Mark. But for me, it's been really useful because it enables you very simply to do some very simple things, like just, you know, how I had that different color map with like the yellow for immunity, green space. You can just do like that kind of selection of different types of categories of data and visualize that. And it's not that complicated to do that kind of level, but to do what Mark was doing is more complicated. But the idea of the video is that he will talk people through that, and potentially any other people could try it from scratch.
Thanks for that.
Colin, have you just got a comment on that? Or?
Yeah, so I was going to add to sort of where we see Land Explorer fitting in. So because GIS can cover a whole range of complexities and different data sources. So what with Land Explorer we want to do is prioritize the data, the sources of data that are of interest to communities like this one here, our community, and so that the identifying data sets that are missing in other GIS applications. So bring the type of data that's important to projects like this into one place, but to do it in a user-friendly way. So it's not kind of a too complicated user interface, so that it's accessible to a wider range of people. Enable a certain type of sharing as well. So basically, if this is for a community, then it's easier. We can sort of be happy to share the data that we gather with other sort of like-minded projects. But also we do want to also support more advanced functionality like this, these kind of overlapping constraints that Mark's work does just to identify hope spots. We would love to be able to add that type of complexity, that type of complex function onto Land Explorer, but make it friendly, so it hides away the complexity and just displays the results of the kind of constraints that Mark has developed.
Brilliant, wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Let's just have a one minute stretch, jump up and down, refresh your tea, and we'll come straight back. So just a minute. Okay. Great, so Simon's had to dash off for some childcare responsibilities. That was really amazing. That was great. Just to say as well that all of these are recorded, because there's a lot of information, a lot of very valuable information that comes through in these Zoom sessions, of which this is the 4th. And so they're on our YouTube channel, these recordings. Yeah, so they're there just to revisit the different presentations. Dan's done a presentation on his stuff before as well, which is on there. Joolz did a Land Explorer presentation, so there's lots of stuff in the previous meetings videos. Great, so over to you, Joolz. So we've just a bit of background. In previous meetings, we started to think about how might all of these amazing projects and people kind of have a space that they can be shared on a platform of some kind, where the different projects can kind of put themselves, where this work can carry on more easily, and the cross-fertilization and collaborations can carry on more easily outside these meetings by having a platform that can host them all, and that as a sort of internal community space, but also to be outward facing. So what if councils or others want to find a particular, want to do some mapping, and how would they find you? How would they choose what kind of approach they wanted to take, and so on. And so Joolz has been doing a little bit of research. We had a presentation from one such platform called Gather, our last session, but Joolz has been doing a bit more research about that and about alternatives that we could use. So over to you, Joolz.
Cool. Yeah, so essentially we're talking about sort of community software and how we get together.
I can't hear you very well. Is that the same for others, or is it just me? Oh no, hang on. I know what it is. I haven't got my headphones on. Sorry.
Can you all hear me? Give me a quick wave if you can hear me. Cool. Cool. Okay, no worries. Yeah, so we're sort of considering what community software we use to get together as groups, teams, individuals, networks, because we're more powerful together. We're all really well connected, and I'm sure we've got our own contacts and networks. So we had a presentation from Joss at Good People, who have developed a platform called Gather. I've also been doing a little bit of work and looking at a product called Vocalize, which is community management software. Really with my product development hat on. So as I say, I've been historically product development director for large scale SaaS, software as a service operations, and worked very closely with Colin and the team at Shared Assets on Land Explorer. And so I've sort of been doing a bit of an assessment, really. So the 3 platforms I've looked at are Gather, Vocalize, and Hylo. And I guess the list of criteria are, is it robust? You know, is it going to be there in 5 years' time? Once we put our, you know, once you set up and get a community onto a platform, it's very difficult to move away and migrate and potentially take your data with you. What other people might be using and what other communities might be there already. Because, you know, it's a big world out there. There's lots of cool, interesting things going on. Is it open source? You know, can we fork it? Can we use it? Can we play with it? Interoperability, can we integrate with other things like linked open data from Digital Commons? Can we integrate with Land Explorer? for instance. Equally, if we do that, and we put lots of data and sets, can we take those, do we own the data? Can we take that data back and go elsewhere? Prospective integrations, and again, I'll name check Land Explorer and Digital Commons in terms of, it'd be very exciting if we had a platform that we could use a mapping function on and to talk about all these really cool stuff that everybody's doing. How easy is it to use and set up? And what does it cost? Is it free? Then also sort of more deeper things in terms of what I like to call aspirational resonance. Do we share a mission and a purpose with the organization that's providing the infrastructure? And that's particularly relevant when we consider the platform co-op movement, because much of our digital infrastructure is owned and controlled by capital and by venture capitalists. And there's a nascent platform co-op movement of which Digital Commons and Land Explorer are part, which means the community of users, the communities of practice actually own the digital infrastructure. And that's really important because that digital infrastructure is often the gatekeeper for data. And a really good example of that is Ordnance Survey. So historically, we've all had to pay loads of money to platform providers that allow us access to data that has been paid for through our taxes. So we fund Ordnance Survey, we pay for it, we should be able to access that data to be able to be citizen planners and what have you. So a key question when we're selecting a social platform for our group is it cooperatively owned? Is it open source? And do we share a mission? And the next thing I considered was cooperative principles and potential cooperation with Digital Commons and others. In terms of Joss, who came to this group and presented Gather, we were scheduled to have a meeting pre-Christmas to talk further about it. And we had arranged a meeting, but then schedules collided and Christmas happened and we didn't actually get to meet. And we've yet to pick up conversations this year. Despite that, my recommendation would probably be not to use Gather and to actually consider a platform called Hylo. And I'll share my screen in a moment and just run through very briefly a couple of things about Hylo. One of the reasons potentially not to use Gather is it's not a mature product. It's not open source. It's based around a WordPress engine. And it's a very small team. That's not to say the people at Gather aren't great. I know they're lovely people and project, but my preference would be probably to work with them to develop something greater than the sum of its parts, and actually have a conversation with them about cooperating and doing something different. So I'd recommend Hylo, and I'm just going to share my screen. Share. And the reason, so hopefully you can see a browser window. You'll give me a wave of hands. Yeah, cool. So this is Hylo. It's developed by an organization called the Terran Collective, which are a very mature open source organization. And Hylo is specifically designed to meet our requirements in terms of a space where we can all chat. So we can create a discussion, an event, an offer, a resource, a project, a request, or a group. And we'd probably create a group, and this is where we'd have a news feed of posts and discussions and what have you between ourselves. There's then a project section, an events section, and you can create events and what have you. And in particular, there's a map. And the map's really interesting because there's lots of ways you can potentially filter the map. So what we could do with the kind of information that Coleman, the social food and gardens project are creating a map, we can put that data in. And this map used by Hylo is via Mapbox. Not quite sure what the base map is, but essentially, if we could imagine this map bit essentially being Land Explorer, where we can toggle on and off lots of lovely things like agricultural land classification that we just heard about. And in terms of the Social Food and Gardens project, on the map would be listed at this stage the allotments, the food hubs, the community orchards and the local authority farms with contact details. So hopefully you can see why that might be a really interesting integration. Hylo is open source and has open APIs that are very well documented, so that's a relatively short step should we choose to do something like that. The Terran Collective itself is a mission-driven organization based in California in the US. They're a community of care and practice, building systems and tools for a regenerative future. And their focus really is on bioregions, which I think is a really good way of defining our areas as opposed to political boundaries. Further integrations moving forward could incorporate, and this is a company called Inspiral, where they produce products, and again Inspiral are a platform co-op that shares money, power and information. So they have a suite of tools, co-budget for sharing money between groups, power in terms of a decision-making platform called Lumio, where people can vote and discuss. And then in terms of sharing information, and a really elegant example of sharing information, and this is something we're doing at iFarm in terms of documenting our playbook, essentially, in terms of how we're moving stuff into the commons, is actually to create a Git book, a wiki, in terms of information and resources. And again, with all of the amazing skills and experience in this group, the kind of wiki or playbook that we could create in terms of how we go as citizen planners and communities, and then start to talk to local authorities, I think this would be a powerful suite of tools. Of course, there's an element of vision in what I'm describing, but the starting point would be simply looking at looking to get and set up Hylo, which is I've set up a mini group previously, and it's relatively straightforward to create a group. So we create a group, and it can be protected or restricted, or it can be public. We can simply enter the group name, and we can invite one another, and then we're all members of that group. We can chat, and we all have the ability to create discussions, events, offers of help to one another, which I think is a very nice thing, requests of help, resources and what have you. So my recommendation would be Hylo, and I'm happy to sort of project lead on that in terms of setting stuff up. And the final thing again is to just remember that we're not alone, and actually Hylo is already used by a community of groups and practice worldwide, globally. And indeed, this will be interesting to column. The first post that came up is Leo, who I know from the Platform Co-op's Unfound Accelerator program, suggesting a co-op data club. And this little chat also name checks Oliver Sylvester Bradley, which many of us might know from Open Co-op's event. So there's already a communities on there and chatting. And if we just briefly scroll through, there are other people talking about mainstreaming planetary health, zero hunger, zero carbon food systems, peace building, mastery in planetary health, and interoperable modules and blocks. Bay City's food safety scholarship program happening in San Francisco, and this kind of thing. So I think this would be a really good community and software platform to base our activities around. Happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic, thank you, Jules.
Yeah.
Colm, is that a hand for now, or is that a historical hand up? Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, let's have a kind of a round of, hi Miriam. Any clarifying questions for Jules? Obviously, a lot of these things make sense only by doing it and having a play and seeing how things interact through using them. Rachel.
Sorry, I realised you said you'd do around, but I just had a question, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So would this be somewhere that we could post, say, the stuff that we developed from the urban hotspots, like the methodologies, is somewhere that we can host and share them on that site? Or is it kind of to keep this group kind of going if Maddie decides not to do it anymore? I guess the group will facilitate itself through the platform.
So to answer that, yes, it will take off some of the administrative burden of, say, Maddie and Janie, who kind of convene this stuff. I guess Maddie will still be posting next dates and essentially using this system to create an event, for instance, for the next meeting with the Zoom link and what have you in. And in terms of your work, Rachel, yes, I mean, again, I'll quickly just share my screen again. So essentially, yes, in our land mapping group, our mutual updates in terms of interesting news would be formatted very much like this as a post, very similar to a Facebook news feed. So following on from today's meeting, for instance, we might do a short description post link to the recorded video and any hyperlinks that might be relevant for today's discussions. That would include yours and Mark's, those kind of, and then further links to some of the information and data or answers to brief Q&A stuff in terms of contaminated land. So there's really interesting or relevant search functionality. So you can quickly find that. So you can go, oh, where was that land food futures stuff? Where's the link to their presentation and all of the juicy information that was contained within that. So it'd very much be presented in a sort of in a newsfeed format. But then we can also potentially create projects, and in the project section you can store documents and this kind of thing, and that might be an area where we actually co-create and work on stuff together. So Janie's mentioned the right to grow, so that could be a project that we all collaborate on, and we can start to put our documents and details in there. So it's some online storage and access as well. So Janie shared in the chat the right to grow PDF. So we may or may not have captured that from this, and we may or may not have downloaded it or remembered where we put it and this kind of thing, but it could be in the right to grow project section on this software. So I hope that answers your question.
I love it, Jules. I think that looks a really good platform. I mean, the things that have come out of today is the work that Mark and Rachel are doing, that kind of step-by-step guide of how to do this. I think that would be a wonderful thing to have somewhere on this platform. And in a sense, all of us are doing it slightly differently. How do we tease out what our USP is? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the different ways of doing it, so that if someone like Jamie comes on board for the first time, he can see at a glance, oh, right, that's the geographical area they're working in, or that's the, is it a densely urban site or rural? I mean, there's a lot of difference, Rachel, in what you're doing to, for instance, the work in Lambeth, which was, it's very urban. And say, if you're coming from Liverpool, you might relate better to the Lambeth work. So within each project that we're doing, there are unique differences, but also amazing commonalities. And the whole layering process, which we've talked quite a lot about today, is which data we collect. Why are we collecting particular data, and why are we leaving other data off this layering process? That's a really useful thing for people to unpack right from the start, which I think we could have on the Hylo platform. So talking beginners through so much of the jargon, a lot of the, there's, because I mean, I've learned so much, but only because I keep coming to these meetings. Like at first glance, it just is quite overwhelming, the amount of info there. So trying to unpack the different systems, the data sets, the different ways we're doing it, I think it'd be incredibly useful. But that requires work and that, administration. And I want to understand how that would actually work for all of us. Who's going to take on that responsibility? Are we all going to agree to, what are the parameters, I suppose, in a sense? That's me. Yeah, go on, Joolz.
Yeah, that was a really good overview, Janie. Thank you. A couple of key points or things to mention, and I am just going to share my screen again, just briefly. So this handbook is via Gitbook, which again is open source, and it's generally free to not-for-profits. So we can apply for a free license of Gitbook again for via iFarm or what have you. And from my perspective, the really, again, as iFarm, we're writing a playbook, and we're going to be using this to record the how-to, the methodology and the guide. And from today's meeting, again, it was really interesting to hear sort of from Food Futures and Social Farms and Gardens, the methodologies, where is that data, and little snippets of information about contaminated land, so we can create that into a resource like a wiki like this. In terms of iFarm creating that as a playbook, that's something we're applying for funding for, and I'm likely to be applying for funding from an organization called Climate 2025 to actually potentially do some of this work in terms of integrating some features. And that's something we could have, or I could have conversations with Column and Digital Commons about as well, in terms of working with them. So it would actually potentially be funded work. As with anything, the system itself is only as good as the data or users that jump on it. But I think we'd all have a lot of fun doing that, and it's free to start. So
sorry, I should be responding. Yeah, okay, I think you're right. It's only as good as the users who decide to commit to this. So there's quite a few people not in the room today who would probably be interested to take a look around Hylo and come back to us with I would suggest that what we all need to do is go away and play with it a little and think, is this appropriate for us? But I really appreciate that you've done this background work on figuring out the best platform for us. And I think as a group, we need to agree that we want this platform. What are the benefits of having this platform? We're all still coming together. So we all recognise the benefits of sharing this information. So my sense is there is something here that would be good to continue. And for people, it could be an incredible resource globally, actually. So I do think we have to just take a step back a little bit and ask ourselves if this is something that's needed. And also, Joolz, is there anything out there already that we should be joining rather than starting from scratch? Have you got a sense of that?
Yes, to a degree. I think we should start a group. I'm not sure. I don't know of any other community that has such a diverse membership as this team of people, group of people. There are, again, communities out there like permaculture, gardening, permaculture association, Facebook pages and groups with lots of people having similar conversations, but that's on Facebook. And it's less of a sort of work-based, focused space. So I think we should start. I think the next step in terms of everyone having a little go on it, an assessment of it, is a really good thing. So it's not immutable. It doesn't have to be set in stone. As a next step, if we were to do that, my proposal would be to actually set it up as a group rather than us all going away separately and creating a login and then trying to figure stuff out. Is just to actually set up a group, and then maybe see how it feels. See how it feels and see if it's if it's easy enough. I think it's intuitive enough that everybody can use it without having to pick up a phone or ask a question. That's another key benefit for me. So I'd propose that we set up our mapping group on Hylo. Everyone that has an interest in some time and wants to can then join in, and then feedback, and we can do a review after or at the next meeting.
I think that sounds like a great idea, and we can just put on our project. Sorry, Jeremy, I'll stop. But we could just add our projects there. Like the Lambeth mapping project is now closed. We could just add that document of how we did things. So and anyone else who's whatever stage your project's at, you can add as much or as little as you want, can't you?
If I can just jump in, all very interesting and beyond my technical competency. See Miriam saying she's at the edge of her limits as well, which is good. Hi Patricia. Permaculture Association are part of our core oversight group, so there'd be no problem trying to get hold of Andy and trying to patch him into a conversation either in this group or outside of it. And I'm sure they'd be very interested. Clearly, we're touching here on resourcing, and we haven't got any more money at the moment. We've got some, but not enough to bankroll this. But I think I said earlier on, trying to stitch together narratives that make sense to organisations that are interested in challenging the paradigms that we're working with. And we have got a discussion coming up with Joseph Rowntree Foundation in a couple of weeks. And I think this could fit quite well into our pitch to them, not solely, but as a component of what we're putting together, i.e. what are the root causes we're trying to tackle? Here's one of them. And I think I've got 5 root causes now, and trying to articulate a way saying these are the things that we're tackling that are broken. Here are some solutions that start to mend and heal them. There was another thing I was going to say. Yeah, Maddie suggested to me on a message earlier on in the conversation that we might have a policy influencing network group based around this work later in the year. So again, that would be something that we can start to formulate now, but it would be in the autumn, I guess, Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's me. Thanks, everyone. I really do need to go and get a cup of tea in a minute, but I'm going to listen until 12 o'clock.
Thank you. It'd just be really nice to be able to just hear a few words from everybody. Hopefully we won't run over, but we've only got about 6 minutes or so left. So maybe, Rachel, do you want to sort of kick off? You got your hand up, is that for now?
Yeah, I had a quick question, but also just, I guess, a comment. It sounds really handy because one of the reasons we did the project is because we had this idea of doing a land audit, and then we were like, actually, how do you do that? And there's loads of different ways to do it. And I think having somewhere to send people, somewhere that you can go and explore, like Janie said, would be really valuable all in one place. And then my question is, how easy is it for other people to join the group? Do they have to be added? Can they find it without? I guess it depends if we make it public, but is it quite simple, just send them the link or they can sign in?
Yeah, it's super. If you make it public, it will be public. For instance, again, I'll just quickly share my screen. Oops, is that the right one? So screen one, there we go. So these are public groups and posts. So I haven't joined any of these groups, and this just comes up in a news feed just by signing in. So yes, we can make stuff public. And there are local authorities as well, I think, that would be interested in this kind of community engagement process. So some local authorities have a toe in the water with community platforms already. So yes, it makes it super easy and makes it public, potentially visible.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I'd love to have a session exclusively to look at Hylo with you, Joolz, and maybe anybody else who wanted to. We'd have a little workshop where we can delve into it together and sort of, because I find it that would be more effective than trying to make sense of it on my own, I think. So maybe if there's a session we could have, yeah.
In relation to that then, Maddie, should we just solicit, see who's interested in joining that session, and I can screen share and literally run through the process as I create the group and we start to populate stuff. It might be a fun co-creation session. It's super easy to use. So. Yeah, that would be great, and we could put that out to the wider group as well. Maybe if you just have a date rather than doing a doodle, and then can come along. Janie's put in the chat, can I set up a group right now? I mean, I'd be very happy to do that if people have time and an interest.
I'm just thinking, can you just start it and we can start putting stuff in? If we keep it private for now between us,
yeah,
would that make sense? And then anyone who's got the time could just plop in information and about their projects, if you want to. I mean, I don't think we should hold back. There's no reason to hold back, is there? Because we can always delete stuff and take it out again. I'm
available till 1 o'clock. My next meeting's at 1 o'clock, and so I have time between now and then to do that. So maybe if, because we're obviously getting close to time, maybe if we close off Maddie on other agenda items, and then if anyone has an interest staying on after that to set something up with me, that would be super cool.
Yeah, actually I have to go at 12, but I'd be very happy to meet again later. Sorry, I'm in the middle of stuff.
So yeah, maybe not to rush you on that,
yeah,
necessarily, Joolz, but yeah, just to be able, if you can set something up and share it with me, and I'll share it around with everybody. I think it's also, rather than everyone kind of diving in without much of a foundation, or could be a bit, I don't know, we just got to use our time wisely, haven't we? So it might be good to have a bit of a tutorial first. Go on, Joolz.
I actually think one of the thresholds is the ability to be able to use this software without having any kind of training or induction. So it's like Facebook. I mean, you don't need to be trained to use Facebook. And so by setting something up, you'll just receive an invite via email if everyone's happy. Probably easiest to say, does anyone not want to receive an invite? And you'll receive an invite and we can crack on online. If anyone then does have any challenges in terms of use, I can then do, I'm a novice user as well. I've only set up one group, had a little play. So.
Okay, great. So yeah, if you set up the group and send me the link, and I've got the email list of everybody that's been, and so I can send it out to everyone, and then they can opt in when they're ready and have a play. Yeah, it's fantastic. And just tell us about about your kind of capacity and availability and resources, that, because don't want to just assume that you're going to just get on and do loads of work, Joolz. But yeah, for us all. But it's fantastic. I think it's a really, really juicy direction for this group to go in as well. Really, really makes sense. Yeah, loads of stuff in there about the the Commons and joining lots of dots for me about the conversation we had with Our Food in Monmouthshire yesterday, who are a community benefit society. So they have the capacity to buy, take on, lease, manage land and that sort of thing. Thanks, Janie. Anyway, lots of threads to weave from this point. So let's have just to sort of check out before we all disappear. Just a few words from everybody. Jamie, do you want to start and then just pass on?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, well, thanks for all of that. It was really insightful. Definitely taken a lot from this meeting and excited for the next one. Yeah, don't really know what to say beyond that, really. Lots of things to go and read about and try out, and definitely interested in this Hylo platform and happy to help set up where necessary. I was thinking about that. It would potentially just be a good thing for everyone to add everything in their own format, and then at least we might have something to discuss at the next meeting on which format works best for how to set out projects and stuff. So even if it might be a mishmash in the first week, that might actually be a benefit in some ways. So that's just a quick thought about that. But yeah, thanks everyone. It was really great. Shall I pass it on? Is that how it works?
Yeah, go for it.
Jeremy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I just love maps. So it's really, I mean, like paper maps actually, but it's really interesting being in this, you know, as you call it, co-design, progressive, cutting edge sort of stuff, and very interesting. I'll be sailing in the summer and I'll be using lots of GPS. So that's a different thing altogether. Okay, Miriam.
Yeah, sorry, I missed most of the session, but like I said, like I think I'm starting to work on some mapping projects and definitely would appreciate support. So if there's a group, that sounds like it would work for me.
Dan?
Thank you, Maddie. Yeah, no, thank you for the invitation again and organisation of the meeting, Maddie. It's really great to be part of the group again. Super to hear the updates on the Hotspot project, although I get some of that fed in behind the scenes as well. And also really good to hear about this Hylo platform as well, and I think that can be used definitely to our benefit in the future. You know, some of the projects I've got at the moment are thinking about not only mapping but weighting of variables mapped. So you know, there's lots of different ways of weighting aspects on maps if you're multi-layering indicators on maps for this, you know, to identify where to grow food. And so I suppose that's the next step, I guess, is focusing on, you know, how do you weight what's the importance of some of these variables, both socially, economically, and environmentally. But yeah, much more to talk about, I guess, next time. And yeah, I'll check out here and head to Yang. Maybe she's got some final things to say.
Yeah, so this is my first time to be here. I'm quite overwhelmed by the, you know, information shared here, and feel quite lucky. Like just know this group yesterday, and I'm really happy to be involved in the following catch up or meetings or the platform. Yeah, yeah. I think that's everything from me. I will pass by Colm, I think.
Hi, thanks. Yeah. No, I'm nothing great to add. I'm just loving the evolution of this group. It's touching all of the areas that are of interest to me and our projects, and it's great. Who hasn't? Hands up, who hasn't said something? To Rachel.
Hi, thank you for listening, and it was really nice to share that. And it's really, it's great to see this group, how it's evolved, and share the sort of sharing of methods and avoiding the duplication of effort as well, which is really valuable. So it's good to see you all, and I'll pass to Mark.
just echo what Rachel said about, we're very pleased to be able to present to the group today, and very interested in exploring Hylo, because I think that offers a great way for us to communicate asynchronously, which I think is quite important. Patricia, I don't think you've said anything, so I'll pass on to you.
I'm the same as Miriam. We had to go to another meeting today, so but we're investigating it in Northern Ireland, and it's really good to be part of this conversation, you know, sort of lift our game a wee bit so that we are a wee bit more knowledgeable, know the questions to ask, and also keep our feet in the ground, because we very much work with our members and people that want to grow. So we do need to keep and balance the technical with the people. And maybe that was someone mentioned there, the different layers, or how you weight that, because if people want to grow in that area, that's a weighting, isn't it? You know, if it's a food desert and there's nowhere else to grow, that's somewhere you want to get your mapping done. So it's just good to have all those conversations included in the discussions. I can't see others on the screen, so maybe somebody else would pass on for me. Thank you.
Joolz, do you just want to have a check out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm just blown away by all of the cool activity and the great stuff that's being done in various projects, and so glad we're talking to collaborate and avoid duplication, and a bit overwhelmed by just, you know, again, all the marvelous people and stuff going on. So really looking forward to what we do together moving forward. And who hasn't gone yet?
I think it's just me.
Is that just you, Maddie?
Just Maddie.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, ditto all of that. Feel really honoured and privileged to, you know, have been part of bringing everybody together and holding this sort of emerging work, and seeing where the cross-fertilization can happen and is happening already, as you know, through this group. It's very cool, and every time other possibilities for other cross-fertilization appears. So yeah, thank you so much, Mark and Rachel, for all your amazing work and sharing it so eloquently with us, and yeah, and Joolz for doing that research and bringing your recommendations. So feel very like solid to go forward on your recommendation. So thank you so much. Yeah, we've sort of normally been meeting every 2 months. So do people feel that that's still a good rhythm for us to come back together in a couple of months? Yeah, a few nods there. Okay, we'll keep going with that. That's great. And maybe in between times we can have a little tutorial session with Hylo if people want that, and we'll play around with it as well ourselves. I'll make the various links and the recording available in a follow-up email. Thank you all for staying a bit longer. Really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. Lovely to see your faces. And
thanks everyone. Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah.
Great to see you.
Where's the
How should we over? Nearly 10 minutes. That's all right.
It's fine. You know, it's really interesting. All very good. So just sort of try and, from my perspective, just keep an eye on it. Keep abreast of it. It would be the right phrase, wouldn't it? Just sort of like make sure that I understand what's going on. You're obviously probably more important to this group than I am, which I think is okay, because I think we shouldn't necessarily all be in everything, both be in everything. Yeah, it's really interesting. I was just thinking at the end there, right at the end, I was like, oh yeah, data sets, because I mentioned like paper maps and paper charts. And a few years ago, I was teaching sailing to some people and got them out an ordnance survey map and showed them the river. And they said, I said, where can you sail? And they said, in the blue bits, you know. And then I said, well, no, look at this bit of paper. This is a chart which shows what it looks like at low tide. You know, and that's data sets, isn't it? That's all it is. Two different ways of collecting information and presenting what you need. It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's very. It was great to see. I really enjoyed the way that Mark and Rachel presented their stuff with all the visuals, all the different going through the layers and the from how they approached it. And in terms of, you know, it's hugely useful to a local authority.
Yeah.
Like the difference between not having that and having that.
Yeah.
And then going, okay, what can we do with that? So I'd love the next session for there to be something more around what it means, what it could mean for land use planning.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
producing these maps and
let's
happens then.
Let's let it mulch. We're meeting Simon on Thursday, so that will be very interesting to get his perspective on it as well. Later on today, we said we'd look at the COG email thing I wanted to send out.
Hang on.